And we do now turn to a discussion of the wider impact of Ahmaud Arbery's death and what this trial means when it comes to race relations in this country. We're joined by Shauna Lloyd, who worked as part of the defense team in George Zimmerman's trial, and former NYPD Chief of Detectives Robert Boyce. Both are ABC News contributors. Thank you both for joining us. Shauna, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the parallels between what we see unfolding in this case and the Zimmerman trial. We remember George Zimmerman, the neighborhood watch volunteer who shot and killed Trayvon Martin, was acquitted of manslaughter charges and found not guilty of second-degree murder. So what substantive differences do you see in this case, and do you expect we'll see a different outcome?
I think that there are some substantive differences in this case. In the Zimmerman case, after George got out of the car and Mr. Zimmerman was looking for Mr. Martin, there was a period of time in which he stayed on the phone with the 911 officer. He was no longer in pursuit. And, that was happening. In this case, what we have is we have two citizens who got armed, got in a car, and continued pursuit until there was a shot executed. So I think their bit of timing is significantly different. They went with the intention of cornering him and holding him, and this idea of citizen's arrest that they could detain him. So I think that there's some significant differences there. I think with this defense of this citizen's arrest, the idea that they just wanted to keep him in a place where the police could then get to him is an interesting defense. It's not often used. People don't often try to execute it. I think that when you see this is the problems that come along with citizen arrest, how does one detain someone who does not want to be detained if they're not a law enforcement officer? Are they trained to do it? Do they know how best to go about it, and what methods are they allowed to use? So I think we're going to see that at the forefront of this particular case.
And Robert, the defense is trying to reach this reasonable doubt within the jury by really bringing up this law enforcement element here. And so from a law enforcement perspective, what do you think about people taking the law into their own hands and invoking this citizen's arrest statute as a defense?
Well, I see when you hear the defense attorneys speak in their opening remarks, they talk about the level of training that the McMichaels had. Travis with Coast Guard, and the long career Gregory had in law enforcement, both police officer and investigator. So I think they were trying to portray that this wasn't done by someone who doesn't really grasp the law. They should grasp the law. Also, I thought was really interesting is that Greg McMichael looked to have some conversation with the neighbor whose house what Mr. Arbery walked into. I thought that was interesting as well. But there was also brought up that they had probable cause, and that's a high bar. And you have to understand the probable cause versus reasonable suspicion. I thought that was something different that I did not expect today that I saw. That these are two different men that we thought when we saw this as kind of like a gang of vigilantes. No, according to their defense attorneys, they were well trained and understood what they were doing and had a background with Mr. Arbery. This was a very tough time for us in law enforcement. This video came out in the beginning of May of 2020, just a few days later, the George Floyd incident, and it kind of coincided and changed law enforcement as we go forward. Very dangerous thing to do is a civilian arrest. Most don't do it because of civil consequences for it. So for these two fellows to go do that, these two gentlemen, excuse me, it's kind of rare.
Shauna, how does the makeup of the jury impact this case? We know there is nearly all white, 11 white jurors, 1 black juror.
The racial makeup of this particular jury is a little interesting, especially given that the judge actually made a comment earlier on when there was some concerns brought up about the state, about the demographic, and the fact that there were so many African Americans that were stricken. And although they gave reasons, the question is, was there a challenge there that they were dismissed solely based on race? The area is 75% approximately, according to the census, between 73 and 75% white. About 25% of the population in that particular area is African American. So typically we would have expected to see more African Americans seated on this jury. So it definitely brings to question whether or not it's a balanced makeup when it comes to racial dynamic and diversity on this particular jury.
And Robert, we know with this case, the timeline here, that this happened in February of 2020, but it wasn't until May of 2020 when many of this came to light to the public and there was immediate outrage, and we saw this cell phone video. So I have to ask you, how have video recordings of these incidents of young black men being killed made a difference in taking these cases to trial and during trial?
I think we've seen this throughout the last 5 or 6 years, that video evidence is so compelling when you see it. You can't watch that video evidence of Ahmaud Arbery and not be shaken by it. Even worse today, you saw the body cam video of Officer Dugan. The jury has to go home now and wrestle with that. Those are visceral images of extreme violence. Shotgun blast to the body is devastating. They have a whole weekend to think about that before they come back on Monday. But it has changed policing dramatically in such that how you handle these things. Again, this Greg McMichael has been around a long time. It's a little surprising that they went after this individual without just following him and calling 911 and not approaching him and confronting him. We teach our officers off duty just to keep an eyeball on someone, follow them, whatever. Do not confront unless you're in uniform. So a little different circumstance here, and they have to get past that to the jury. I don't know if they will.
Shauna, lawyers for Arbery's family have called Arbery's murder a, quote, modern-day lynching. Meanwhile, Georgia didn't have a hate crime law until this year. So how will Georgia's history with race play into this trial?
I think not only Georgia, but across the U.S., we're looking at race relations in this country, and specifically in the South, especially with this particular trial. I think it's being brought to the forefront because they would say if it was just another individual, just the idea that the 911 call where all he said was, well, there's someone, an African-American black man running. He didn't have anything else to say. He didn't have some other affirmative action or crime that he could speak to other than he looked suspicious. And, you know, at this point in time, that's significant because typically if you were to see if he had seen a Caucasian man jogging, even if he had not been from the area, would he have had that same reaction? Highly unlikely. So this trial is going to center a lot about race. It's going to speak a lot to the members of that community as to the disparities in the way the different races are treated. So I think that the change in the laws is bringing it a little bit more current, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
So many layers, so much to unpack. We're going to leave it right there. Shauna Lloyd and Robert Boyce, thank you for your expertise today.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.